Okay, and I think the last statement of Naomi clearly emphasizes the challenge we are at. I think a system with a lot of renewables in the electricity generation sector needs to have a prosumer and an electricity demand side that is able to cope with that increasing, fluctuating generation. And on that topic, I would like to talk today with two experts in this field. I would like to talk to Ulrike Hinz and Marian Malafosse. Hi Ulrike, hi Marion.
Hi. Hello.
Ulrike, you are Senior Advisor Climate and Energy at WWF in Berlin. You have worked at a lot of companies, among them Ubitricity, 50 Hertz, but you have also founded your own organization, non-profit organization. Would you tell us a few words about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so generally I started off in the energy world at a smaller company, a startup, which was really cool because then you kind of have like a lot of different tasks that you can do. Then I was working also at a TSO, transmission system operator in Germany, one of the 4 at 50 Hertz. And now I joined the WWF, so that's fun. And my own non-profit organization, it's an association that is basically for connecting for sustainability. So we tried to do a lot of events. It was a lot of networking, so now of course it's very difficult, but really to try to connect startups to find each other and understand that you can be sustainable and that you can finance yourselves, and that there is a lot of demand, which wasn't really the case so much when we founded it in 2014.
Very interesting. Marion, you are at SmartEn as a policy manager at around the same. Started at around the same time that gridX joined Smart Energy Europe. So I think you have worked before at the EU Commission, but joined in March. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Smart Energy Europe?
Sure. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. So if you allow me, I would like to quickly share my screen to really briefly present SmartEn. So indeed, I've joined SmartEn as policy manager in March. Prior to that, I was working in the European Commission in DG Energy, in the retail and consumer unit, where I was working on active customers, demand-side flexibility. And today, now within SmartEn, this is a continuation of those topics. So SmartEn is the European Business Association for Demand-Side Flexibility, which represents the consumer and digital solutions. Our aim, and that's the objective throughout SmartEn, is to ensure that every energy user, so every business, home, car, they can play a role in supporting a clean energy system. And the members that we represent through this business association support, first of all, consumer empowerment and prosumer business model, so that consumer can really play an active role in the electricity market in support of the clean energy transition. We also support effective markets to allow those prosumers to be able to participate. And of course, the solutions that we represent throughout our members are also supporting sector integration. So making sure that the demand-side flexibility of every end users, be it electric vehicles, active buildings, can also contribute to the clean energy transition and are considered as decentralized, what we call decentralized energy assets, which are integrated into the energy system and then contributing to the efficiency of the system. So, of course, a very important element of SmartEn is about its membership. So very briefly, we have a broad variety of members, ranging from small startups to big energy companies, and we have service providers. We have market platform. We have provider of cloud-based operations, such as, for instance, yourself, gridX. But we also have manufacturing and building systems, as well as actor in the e-mobility sector. So that's it for this very short introduction.
Thank you, Marion. Then let's start the discussion, and I would like to invite all the audience again to type in their questions below, because I think it is good to have an interactive discussion. But starting the discussion from the bird's eye view, we get more and more renewables in the system. Do you think the system will be able to cope with those fluctuating generation assets? And how?
Should I start, or who do you want? Yeah, all right. I think that obviously is a challenge, but let me point out another challenge maybe first. I mean, this renewable energy will be in Germany, for example, or especially wind and solar. And I mean, what we are doing as an NGO, we're really trying to work towards the getting to the climate goals, to the Paris climate goals, basically. And what we want is an 80% renewables share in the electricity system for 2030. So that means to get there, which is the path of Paris, we would need approximately 15 gigawatt installed capacity of renewables every year. And now we just reached 6.5, I think, last year in 2020. So that really is like a big gap that we still have to fulfill and to reach that. And of course, there's also obstacles and challenges coming towards this flexibility system that we need. But I think we've lived very long in a supply side flexibility, basically, where we can turn our factories, and not the factories, but the power plants on and off. Not that much, right? But more or less, and now we need to come to a rather flexibility side on the demand. So I think that also gives a lot of opportunities to change the system, to use demand response and use new technologies in order to get there. And we do have a lot of flexible sources. We just need the right incentives and the right market platforms, basically, to use that.
If I may also compliment, because full alignment on what Ulrike said, indeed, and I think the challenge is not the renewable energy itself, but rather the renewable energies are the solution to a challenge, which is the decarbonization of society at large, and that needs to be with this integration of renewables. You will also support further electrification, and this will feed into one another. But for that to be successful and not to become an additional challenge, and to be really able to have a system that cope with this increase of renewables, you need to have indeed this shift towards the demand side and the demand side flexibility. And for us, it is clear that demand side flexibility is the bridging solution between increase in electrification and increase of clean electrification with renewables. So that is really the key solution, and that is really what we are advocating for. And indeed, the just one additional point, that the active participation of consumers and users is central to ensure a cost-effective clean energy transition that benefits the consumers themselves, the end users, but also the system at large.
Okay, Marion, and I think SmartEn also published a recommendation to the EU Commission making demand side responsibility a key responsibility of all member states, and a binding target, a binding national target. Why do you think this is necessary? Are the national efforts still not enough?
So first of all, a key advancement that has been achieved at EU level in the regulatory framework was through the clean energy package, where there has been a recognition of demand side flexibility, demand response, and it gives and the rules are very positive, because it allows for demand response, demand side flexibility to participate in all markets. So that is a must that needs to be implemented. Of course, this implementation is a priority, but it's not yet the case across Europe. So that is the first point, ensuring access of demand response to all electricity markets. However, this will not be sufficient, because we need this access to the market, but we need also further incentives to valorize demand side flexibility, to make sure that it has a value and that it is also rewarded. And we feel that this is something that is currently lacking in all the different, let's say, methodologies that are being used for planning our energy system. There is not a sufficient recognition of demand side flexibility in its role and its contribution to the system. So one of our recommendations is indeed to have a specific target for demand-side flexibility. The reason for that is that at the moment with the Fit for 55 package, there is a clear ambition to increase the renewable energy target in line with the increased decarbonization. However, as I said for the first question, for that to be successful, the integration of a higher share of renewables, we need to make sure that the system can be flexible. And for that, we need the demand-side flexibility. So I think it's important that we have a target for demand-side flexibility as a supporting measure for an increase in renewables. So this target would be a 10% target of peak demand reduction achieved through demand-side flexibility throughout at national level. And this could be achieved by activating the demand-side flexibility of different end users. So it is up then to the member states to define where is the flexibility potential and how to activate it. But at least this will give visibility and a clear trajectory as to the importance of demand-side flexibility. And this will also, because we see that with the different targets that have been implemented for energy efficiency, for renewables, that this gives a trajectory for investment, some certainty also. So that is also something that is welcome to really integrate right from the beginning, the contribution and the value of demand-side flexibility for the whole system.
I see, yeah. Ulrike, what is your point of view on this? Could WWF support this recommendation?
In detail, I haven't looked at the numbers, so the 10% that were mentioned, but in general, I absolutely agree. I think the question is also like, should demand response be more incentivized, maybe also by regulation? And I think before we even come to incentivization, which is also really important, we need to make sure that regulation doesn't block demand side response and flexibility, which in a lot of cases is still the case. So for example, it's not like it can be a double charging of the feed-in tariff, for example, if you use different sources. So I think we should also look at regulation where it blocks it and then take away these clauses that are still there. I think definitely incentives or rules might be. I'm not too sure about that. In general, it's a good idea. But I think also we should really try to now use our R&D outcomes that we've had in Germany, for example. We've been working on the Syntec programs, like a big energy program for the couple of last years. I myself was involved a little bit in the wind node project, and their flexibility platforms have been created. Basically, there was products that have been defined, and the design of the whole platform and the processes were tested with a lot of companies that would potentially bid on this platform. And I really think it's very important to follow up on this and make this come to life as well. So we do have, as Marion already mentioned, I think like a marketplace as well, like a place where players can actually bid for and offer their flexibility. And then what kind of flexibility, I think, will be also a decision by the market, like whatever is most attractive at the point in time and also the cheapest, considering always, of course, our climate goals. But yeah, this I would really like to see, because we do have a lot of flexibility already in place. Like it's there, but it doesn't function as flexibility yet. Like we've been talking about it for a couple of years, and there's maybe some states like the UK who are a little bit more advanced on this topic, I think. But it'll be really good to see how to implement this and make this reality, because maybe in e-mobility, for example, we haven't reached our critical mass yet in order to use this flexibility. But in industrial processes and cooling houses, for example, there's lots of potential.
And how do you see the potential of residential customers? And that's a question we have from the audience. How big of a factor are private households becoming flexible to reach those goals? For example, by time of use tariffs. For the two of you, the question, I guess. Ulrike, would you like to start?
Yeah. I think Marion, you were still muted, so I'm just going to start. No problem. I think it is an important topic as well. I would rather always say a little bit broader scale, like the Quartiersebene, like the different housings altogether. I would say is really where you can see the potential and where you can have smart grids, for example, installed, and really make use of all the different supply and all the different demand options that you have there. I think for small houses, like individual houses, it is very important, as we've heard in the presentation before, to install solar panels, for example, to just generate your own electricity first. And then, of course, like try to use that first because that's also cheaper and it's better for the energy system, but then also maybe to have your electric vehicle as a flexibility source. And this needs to be pooled, of course. So there needs to be companies and marketplaces and all the middlemen basically to ensure this is going to happen.
Indeed, and I think it's true that most of the time when we talk about demand response, it was really much at industrial level because that's where you had an important load to really activate and there. But today, the highest potential we see lies in buildings, in transports, really from the end users side and from the residential end user in buildings, there is a lot of potential. And actually, it's estimated by the Commission that in 2050, 83% of EU households may contribute to renewable energy production, to demand response, to energy storage. So the potential here is huge. There just need to be an activation of their demand-side flexibility potential. But this can be done without major upfront costs because most of the assets that could provide demand-side flexibility are already there. It's typically what we call non-dedicated assets. So it could be heating and cooling system. It could be electric vehicles that are not used primarily for the purpose of flexibility. They're used for other purposes, but yet they can have important flexibility potential that can be activated. For that, there is a need to, of course, SmartEning those assets, but then you can really have a significant demand-side flexibility potential.
Thank you. I've seen you both think this sector coupling is a very important aspect of flexibility, and that brings me to my next question. We have seen in the past days a lot of news about a group of scientists publishing a paper on the actual CO2 footprint of battery electric vehicles. They state that the footprint is in actual much higher than it is calculated recently. So what is your opinion on that? Is electrification of transport and heating the right solution, or should other fuels, synthetic fuels, biofuels also play a role?
Well, to be honest, I haven't read through the paper yet, so I don't know exactly why they claim that the numbers were wrong, calculated for EVs or battery electric vehicles before, so I can't really reflect on that. But in general, I've been working in the electric mobility sector for a couple of years, and there was many studies basically to confirm that eventually electric mobility is better than the normal mobility that we have right now. Of course, it's not black and white, and you always have to look at the whole life cycle of a car as well. So that means that maybe the production actually sets free more emissions, but then in the use of the car and over 100,000, 120,000 kilometers, when you use green electricity, of course, instead of petrol or diesel, then it will have an advantage. So I don't know exactly about why they say I was wrong, but I would still believe in the many studies basically that were out before that really looked at the whole life cycle. And I don't have a problem with Power-to-X or hydrogen cars in general. If we would have enough hydrogen, I think that's like the second part of it. So biofuels and hydrogen as like Power-to-X, what you can basically like have under there. So with hydrogen, the problem is that we don't have enough available. We already know now that we will use, or we have to use a lot, and we have to use a lot, especially for industry applications that do not have another alternative. So for example, for the steel sector, for the chemist sector, and for cement production, they cannot switch to anything else, whereas for cars, we can switch and use electricity. And the thing is also, there's green electricity first, and then you have your electrolysis, and then you have hydrogen, for example, as a power fuel. And that would mean that you lose approximately 40% of the energy in this process. And since we do not have the hydrogen available, we have to import a lot. I would say prior to the other sectors which do not have another alternative to decarbonize itself. And I would always favor electric cars to that regard. And this is saying like the transport car sector. When it comes to bigger transport means, so to huge buses, to the aviation, to ships, for example, then Power-to-X and power fuels definitely play a role. And
if I could comment on EVs, indeed, well, it's important, of course, to look at the whole life cycle and the circularity aspects. But I don't know the detail of this study either, but I think what's important also to look at and how EVs can contribute also to reduction of carbon footprint is not only from their consumption side, and of course, if it's done through clean electricity, that's always positive and good, but it's also how through these electric vehicles, and especially when it's accompanied by smart charging and SmartEning, how these electric vehicles can contribute to also reduce the carbon footprint of the building it's connected to, because then the car which is going to be parked at building site, it's actually where you will have a lot of it will be parked there for a long time. That's where you will also have a lot of potential to activate demand-side flexibility and to optimize the energy consumption of the building. So not only in energy savings terms, but also in making sure that the use of renewable electricity is optimized at all time. And then you also have the interaction of the electric vehicle with the grid. So also there, the same principle to ensure that the grid can, the electric vehicles can communicate both way with the grid, react to specific signals, and really optimize the consumption when it is best for the system, meaning when it is clean electricity available, and also to be able to adjust in terms of peaks. And you have cases where you can ensure that it's 100% renewable electricity in close to real time, in every hour that it will be clean electricity. And also, one additional element is that if we want the uptake of electric vehicles really to increase, we need to have that accompanied by smart charging, because with electric vehicle, the electricity consumption can really can up to double. But if it's accompanied by smart charging, some cases in Norway have shown that if the energy demand would only increase by 3.5% with smart charging instead of doubling. So this is really a key solution for the uptake of electric vehicles.
Yes, definitely. I think that's my opinion on this too, that in the end it also it depends clearly on the amount of energy you can charge a car with renewable energies, and the way you can manage the smart charging. I think coming back to a topic you, Ulrike, mentioned, power to X, power to gas. I think there was a huge discussion in Germany during the past year and the beginning of this year how to promote this technology. Do you think we will be able to produce all the fuels in the future in Germany or in Europe that we will need?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned that a little bit. No, for Europe, maybe that's a bit easier than for Germany, I think, or like some countries will have the renewable electricity demand available in order to, as I said, produce green hydrogen. So from electrolyzers and renewables. But in Germany, we definitely won't. Like, this is already clear. And this is also formulated in the national hydrogen strategy that we have in Germany, that we will also rely a lot on imports. And we're already trying, we're already speaking with a lot of countries. There have been a couple of contracts made with the typical countries, I would say, like Chile and Australia and Morocco. They're working on that. So there's definitely the plan to have a lot of international cooperation, which I think is needed. And it's also good from a independent point of view, that you have multiple countries or multiple regions that supply your energy, and you're not dependent on only one country. But to add on this, I always really want to point out the sustainability criteria that we also need in that, because it's not possible to, for example, go to a very dry area naturally, a lot of these areas had a lot of sun, so a lot of these areas are arid, so dry. So there's not a lot of drinking water available, and you need water, of course, for producing hydrogen. And therefore, you really also have to look at the water resources that are there, and you cannot take the drinking water from the people there. So I think this is something where I would say that a lot more research is also needed in either desalination techniques, but they are, I think, also a bit costly, or just doing electrolysis directly with the salt water. And apart from that, like these environmental issues that you really have to look at for every project, specifically when you import hydrogen, there's also some social and political criteria that you should check. Like one is political corruption, of course, as we know it from other projects and international or geopolitical cooperation, but also the social aspects that you really try to ensure that the people working in these countries also benefit from the projects being established in these countries. So maybe even also a climate perspective, in the sense, if you would have a certification for green hydrogen in the future, then who could claim this green hydrogen, basically? So there's a lot of things to think about, and I really hope that we can establish like a sustainable criteria catalog, maybe, that then classifies good green hydrogen projects.
Yeah, indeed. Marion, do you have an opinion on that, or do you think that power to gas should be more of a national decision?
Well, very briefly on that, because at SmartEn we don't really have a strong opinion regarding power to X, because our main focus is indeed on the direct electrification of sectors. So that's where we see the priority, and indeed then of course to go towards more indirect and other type of solutions for other sectors that are harder to abate. But indeed we're more focusing on direct electrification.
But I think that's to mention that again, that's the basically the criteria that we have as well, or like the consensus that everything that you can electrify, do it, because then you don't lose the energy in the transmission path in between. So definitely agree.
We have one more question from the audience. Are recycling circular economy goals or efforts included in the Fit for 55 package? Maybe this is more addressing to you, Marion.
Well, circular economy, this is not really something that we enter much as SmartEn, I have to say. So I wouldn't be able to address that question.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're more focusing also on energy aspects, right? And I think this is touching other aspects. Then maybe, again, a question from me, and I think it's the last one, and I think it will be the same. I asked Naomi, so what, in your opinion, should be the one thing that should be changed in the Fit for 55 package? The one thing you would change if you could? Starting with Marion.
Okay, so, well, one thing that I would like to change is to, as we see at the moment, is that they got things almost right, in the sense that we need direct electrification. We need to have more renewable in this electrification. But the role of demand-side flexibility for supporting this objective is not sufficiently recognized. We see that it's recognized for transport. There's more push for electromobility and smart charging and the integration of electromobility within the energy system. But for other end users, and particularly buildings, this is, in my opinion, not necessarily sufficiently addressed. I have the impression that buildings are also considered as isolated from the grid, and everything is about optimization of the consumption within the building, but not in interaction with the grid. So I think we need to understand that all of the different end users have assets that can contribute to the grid, and that will also contribute to system efficiency, contribute to consumer empowerment, bill reduction, in addition, so really have concrete impacts for consumers, and also really more broader benefits for the system and for climate neutrality. So I think the role of demand-side flexibility as a bridging solution should really be highlighted.
Yeah, well, I want to take this a little bit more on the national level, if I may. Like, so we are glad in general that, of course, the climate efforts have been strengthened and put to 55% until 2030. And now we've seen also that these targets were a little bit taken for Germany, and the efforts there were increased, which is very important. It's not to the level that we think will be sufficient for 1.5 degrees yet, but it's definitely a good sign. And we are now in Germany, especially in the election period. So this will be very, very exciting months. A lot of parties have just shared their political programs that, of course, we are looking at with curiosity as well. And there's a couple of good things in there, but you can see that really the timeliness of this change has not really been put into the programs yet. And therefore, I think like the messages and the measures that you apply have to be strengthened even to really show that you now are being honest about climate change and about the will to tackle it. And when it comes to regulation, then a little bit further, I would just hope that we don't always make our regulation way more complicated and add like a little piece, but at some point also like look at everything together again and see how it also interacts. And of course, a lot of people are doing that, but I think sometimes it's very hard in the energy sector to understand all of the different relations to one another, how one thing influences the other, if it might be contrary. And I think our energy regulation specifically is very complex, and maybe we can take a step back at some point and try to simplify that a little bit and to really try to work towards our goals and look at that again.
Thank you. Very good points from both of you. Unfortunately, we are already at the end of our session. Thank you very much, both of you, for participating at our conference and for contributing so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise.
And that brings us to the end of our gridX conference. It was really a great day, and I will now hand over to Greta and David, who will do a short wrap-up and say a few closing words after a short break. It was really an honor for me to be part of this conference. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.